The coffee shop became their sanctuary. Every Wednesday morning, while Emma was at school, Sarah and Claire would meet at the same corner table where they'd first discovered their shared connection. What began as awkward silence evolved into something neither woman expected: genuine friendship. "He used to do this in college too," Claire said one morning, stirring her latte absently. Whenever something got too emotional, James would create these elaborate stories to avoid dealing with it. After his sister Katie died during our sophomore year, he spent months telling people she was just studying abroad. Sarah traced the rim of her cup, remembering James's tears during their confrontation. He mentioned Katie that day, said losing her broke something in him. "It did," Claire nodded, pulling out her phone. She scrolled through old photos, stopping on one that made her pause. Here, this was Katie. The image showed a younger James with his arm around a girl who shared his dimpled smile. She was amazing, fearless, the kind of person who'd tell you the hard truth even if it hurt. After we lost her, James, he started building these perfect little worlds where nothing bad could touch him. "Is that why you split up?" Sarah asked, the question she'd been holding back for weeks finally surfacing. Claire's laugh held no bitterness, only a worn understanding. "Partly, but mostly we were too young, trying to heal our own wounds while raising a baby. James wanted everything to be perfect, the perfect adoption story, the perfect family. I wanted to acknowledge the mess, the complexity. Emma deserved truth, even when it was complicated." "Emma's stronger than he thinks," Sarah said softly, remembering the video message. "She gets that from Katie," Claire smiled. "Sometimes I see so much of her aunt in her, that same fearlessness about feelings." She hesitated, then added, "Emma asked about you again yesterday, said she misses your Sunday pancake adventures." Sarah's throat tightened. "I miss them too. I miss her. I don't know how to move forward from here." "How do you trust someone who built such an elaborate lie?" "Maybe," Claire said carefully, "you start by understanding why he built it." She pulled out another photo, James at the hospital the day they got Emma. "Look at his face here. That pure joy, that love, that's real." The lies came from fear of losing it, not from a place of malice. A text buzzed on both their phones simultaneously. "James, Emma's school called. She had a breakdown in art class when they were drawing family trees. Can either of you get her?" Sarah and Claire looked at each other across the coffee shop table, years of pain and possibility hovering between them. Finally, Claire spoke. "Let's go together. Show her what family really looks like. Messy, complicated, but real." As they gathered their things, Sarah realized something profound had shifted. In trying to understand James's lies, she'd found an unexpected truth. Family wasn't always what you planned, but sometimes it was exactly what you needed. The family therapy office walls were painted a soft sage green, meant to be calming. Emma sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by colored markers, working intently on what she called her real family tree, while Dr. Martinez observed from her chair. James, Sarah, and Claire sat in a semicircle, watching their daughter, create something entirely new. "Done," Emma announced, holding up her artwork. The tree she'd drawn wasn't the traditional type with straight lines and neat boxes. Instead, it was a sprawling oak with intertwining branches, each one carrying names and connections. At the top, she'd written in rainbow letters, "My special family." "Can you tell us about it?" Dr. Martinez asked gently. Emma pointed to different branches. "See, here's Daddy and Mommy, who chose me and adopted me. And here's Sarah, my bonus mom, who chose us too. And up here," she indicated a branch wrapped in gold glitter, "that's Aunt Katie, who's watching from heaven. And these are all the extra branches for more people we might add someday." James's hand found Sarah's, squeezing gently. 3 months of weekly therapy sessions had slowly rebuilt what his lies had broken. They'd postponed the wedding, yes, but replaced it with something more meaningful, a commitment ceremony that would celebrate their entire, unconventional family. "I have something to share too," Claire said, reaching into her bag. She pulled out a leather-bound photo album. "I found this at my parents' house. It's all the photos of Emma that James and I each took separately over the years. I thought, Maybe it's time to combine them into one story. The album passed between them. Emma's first steps, captured by James. Her first day of preschool, photographed by Claire. Birthday parties, ballet recitals, quiet moments. Their parallel documentation of love for their daughter. There's room for new photos, Claire added, looking at Sarah. Lots of room. Sarah opened her purse and pulled out something she'd been carrying for weeks. The original birth certificate that had started everything. I think it's time for a new story too, she said. One where we don't hide any chapters. That evening, they gathered at James and Sarah's house. Not for a therapy session, but for their first official family dinner. Emma had insisted on decorating, covering the dining room with fairy lights and handmade place cards for everyone. As they sat down, she proudly showed how she'd written them. Daddy James, Mommy, Claire, Mama, Sarah. Is this okay? She asked anxiously. The names? Sarah felt tears prick her eyes as she looked at her place card. It's perfect, sweetheart. James stood, raising his glass. The evening light caught his engagement ring. He'd started wearing it again last week. To our family, he said, his voice steady and true. Not the one I pretended we were, but the one we're choosing to be. To our family, they echoed, Emma's voice the loudest and clearest of all. Outside, the sun set on their imperfect, beautiful truth. No more lies, no more hiding, just love, in all its complicated glory. The first week after the confrontation, Emma refused to go to school. She sat in her unicorn-themed bedroom, clutching the teddy bear Sarah had given her for Christmas, and asked questions no one knew how to answer. Is Sarah leaving forever? Did I do something wrong? Why can't we all just live together? Claire found Emma's homework untouched in her backpack, math problems half completed with tear stains on the corners. During her custody days, she noticed Emma checking her phone constantly, hoping for messages from Sarah that didn't come. She promised she'd always be here. Emma whispered one night as Claire tucked her into bed. Just like you and Daddy promised you'd always love me even when you didn't love each other anymore. At his apartment, James wandered through rooms now haunted by absence. Sarah's coffee mug still sat in the dishwasher. Her favorite blanket remained draped over the reading chair. Emma's artwork on the fridge featured all four of them, James, Claire, Sarah, and Emma, holding hands under a crayon sun. He couldn't bring himself to take it down. Sarah's friends split into warring factions. Her best friend Lisa demanded she cut all ties. He's a pathological liar, Sarah. What else is it he telling you? Meanwhile, her sister Kate advocated forgiveness. People do stupid things when they're scared of losing love. Look how much he loves Emma. But it was the video that finally broke the stalemate. Emma, sitting in her ballet tutu, recorded it on Claire's phone and asked her to send it to Sarah. Hi, Sarah. Emma's voice trembled. Daddy says you're taking time to think. And that's okay because grown-ups need thinking time sometimes. But I wanted to tell you that I'm sorry we didn't tell you the whole truth about my mom and dad. I thought maybe if we pretended, you wouldn't leave like other people did when they found out our family was complicated. The video continued, showing Emma pulling out photos. See? This is when Mom and Dad adopted me. And this is when they decided to be just friends but still my parents. And this, she held up a recent photo from her birthday party. This is when we became an even bigger family with you. Please don't let our lie make you stop loving us. I promise we'll only tell the truth from now on. Sarah watched the video 17 times, each viewing revealing new details. The way Emma's hands shook holding the photos, how she carefully arranged her stuffed animals to watch with her, the ballet shoes Sarah had bought her visible in the background. That evening, Sarah's phone lit up with messages from both James and Claire, sent simultaneously. We need to talk about Emma. She needs all of us. The truth that had torn them apart might be the very thing to bring them back together, not as the perfect family James had pretended they were, but as the beautifully complicated family they could become. Sarah needed caffeine. After another sleepless night of wrestling with her discoveries, she avoided her usual coffee spot, too many memories of morning dates with James, and walked an extra 4 blocks to a new cafe that had just opened. The bell chimed as she pushed open the door. the aroma of fresh coffee momentarily lifting her spirits. "I'll have her." Sarah's order died in her throat as she looked up at the woman behind the counter. Those familiar curls, that bright smile, the same warm brown eyes that lit up Emma's face every morning. Claire Henderson stood before her, equally frozen in recognition. "You're Sarah Mitchell." Claire's voice was soft but certain. "James's fiancé." The cafe was empty except for them. The morning rush not yet begun. Claire's hands trembled slightly as she untied her apron. "My shift just ended. Would you like to sit down?" Sarah found herself nodding, her body moving on autopilot to a corner table while Claire prepared 2 cups of coffee. The minutes stretched like hours until Claire finally sat down, placing a steaming latte in front of Sarah. "I've seen all his posts about you," Claire said, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. "Emma talks about you constantly during our weekends together. She loves how you braid her hair with ribbons." Sarah's throat tightened. "Your weekends? That James said that I was dead?" Claire's laugh was hollow. "Or wait, no, that his sister was dead." "Which version did you get?" "The sister story," Sarah whispered, her coffee untouched. "He said Emma was his niece, that his sister died in a car accident." Claire pulled out her phone, quickly scrolling to a photo. It showed a younger James and Claire in a hospital room, both cradling a newborn Emma. "We adopted her when she was 3 days old, James and I. We'd been together since freshman year of college. The adoption was our dream. We were so young, so in love, so sure we could handle anything." She swiped to another photo, Emma's first birthday, both parents beaming behind a cake. 6 months after the adoption, everything fell apart. The stress, the responsibility, our different parenting styles. "We couldn't make it work as a couple, but we promised to always be Emma's parents." "He never told me." Sarah's voice cracked. "Any of it." "He never tells anyone," Claire sighed. "Every woman he's dated since, he creates this simple story. Uncle James, tragic family loss, devoted brother stepping in. It's easier than explaining the messy truth. I hope with you it would be different. Emma's so attached to you." Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from James with a photo of Emma at breakfast, milk mustache and all. "Love you both," the message read. "He does love you," Claire said gently, seeing Sarah's expression. "But James has always been terrified of complicated emotions. He builds these perfect narratives and convinces himself they're real. The problem is, real life, real family, is always complicated." The coffee grew cold between them as the morning light stretched across the empty cafe. 2 women connected by love for the same child, separated by one man's carefully constructed lies. Sarah waited until Emma's Wednesday afternoon ballet class to confront James. She'd rehearsed this moment countless times in her mind, but nothing prepared her for what she found when she entered their home. James sat cross-legged on the living room floor, surrounded by wedding magazines and his laptop, with a father-daughter dance video playing on repeat. "Sarah!" Perfect timing. His face lit up, oblivious to her tension. "Look at this dance routine. I thought Emma and I could learn it for the wedding. She'd love the twirl at the end." "Stop." Sarah's voice cracked. "Just stop, James." He looked up, finally noticing her trembling hands, the manila envelope she clutched. "What's wrong? Did something happen at work?" "I met Claire today." The words hung in the air like smoke. James's face drained of color, the wedding magazine slipping from his fingers. "Your college sweetheart, Emma's mother, your co-parent, not your dead sister's daughter, your adopted daughter." "Sarah, I can explain." "Explain what?" She pulled out the birth certificate, then Claire's photos. "Explain how you've been co-parenting with a woman you pretend doesn't exist. Explain how you made up a dead sister. Or explain how you let me fall in love with Emma without telling me the truth about who she really is." James stumbled to his feet, the father-daughter dance video still playing softly in the background. "I never meant to." His voice broke. "You have to understand. After my sister died in college, I was broken. Then Claire and I adopted Emma, and for the first time since losing Katie, I felt whole again. But when things ended with Claire, it was like losing my sister all over again. I couldn't bear to explain that pain to anyone. So you stole your dead sister's story? Sarah's voice rose. Used her tragedy to cover your lies? No, yes. I don't know. James sank onto the couch, head in his hands. At first, it was just easier to say Emma was my niece. People stopped asking questions. They didn't need to know about the failed relationship, the custody arrangements, the complications. Then the lie just grew. And what about Emma? Do you think it's fair to her? She knows who Claire is, who I am. I've never lied to her. No, you just made her complicit in lying to everyone else. Sarah's hands shook as she pulled out her phone, showing him Claire's social media. She's been watching us, James. Every post, every moment. Did you think she'd stay quiet forever? The father-daughter dance video reached its end and looped again, the happy music a jarring counterpoint to their pain. James looked up, tears streaming down his face. I love you, Sarah. And I love Emma. I thought if I could just keep things simple, keep everyone happy. Happy? Sarah's laugh was bitter. Look around, James. Look what your simple lie has done to all of us. The sound of a car door outside made them both freeze. Claire returning Emma from ballet early. The moment of truth had arrived sooner than either expected. The birth certificate burned a hole in Sarah's desk drawer for 3 days before she finally gave in to her curiosity. At 2 a.m., with James sleeping soundly upstairs, she opened her laptop and began her search. The soft blue light illuminated her face as she typed Claire Henderson into social media search bars, her hands shaking slightly with each kick. Nothing came up at first. The name was too common, the results too vague. But then she noticed something odd about James's own social media presence. His carefully curated Instagram feed, full of architecture projects and family moments, had a conspicuous gap around the time of Emma's birth. Posts from that period were sparse, with only professional updates about his firm's projects. Sarah dug deeper, scrolling through years of photos. She noticed James had untagged himself from dozens of photos during that period, leaving digital footprints of his attempt to erase something or someone. Each deleted tag was like a breadcrumb leading her backward through time. Then she found it, buried in an old friend's wedding album from 8 years ago. A single photo, overlooked in James's digital cleanse. James in graduation robes outside their university, his arms wrapped around a stunning woman with Emma's curly hair and bright eyes. They were holding a handmade sign that read, "We're adopting." Their smiles were radiant, full of hope and love. The caption tagged Claire Henderson and James Cooper with the hashtag future parents. Sarah's throat tightened as she clicked on Claire's name. The profile was private, but the profile picture made her gasp. It showed Claire and Emma at what appeared to be a recent school event, their matching smiles undeniable. This wasn't some distant birth mother. This was an active parent in Emma's life. With trembling fingers, Sarah opened her phone's photo gallery. She zoomed in on pictures from Emma's birthday party, scrutinizing details she'd overlooked. In the background of one shot, she spotted a tote bag with the logo of Riverside Elementary, the same school visible in Claire's profile picture. All this time, Emma had been attending the same school where her real mother dropped her off on her custody days. The pieces were falling into place with sickening clarity. The mysterious phone calls, James's evasiveness about his sister's death, Emma's confusion about different photo albums, even the way Eleanor sometimes slipped and almost said the wrong name when calling for Emma. Sarah's laptop pinged with a notification. Someone had just liked one of James's recent photos, a picture of him and Emma at the beach. The username made her heart stop. Claire_Hend. Within seconds, the like disappeared, but Sarah had seen it. She clicked on James's follower list, and there it was. Claire had been watching their life all along, hidden in plain sight. As if on cue, her phone lit up with a text from James. "Can't sleep. Coming down for water. Want anything?" Sarah quickly closed all her tabs, her mind racing. She had found her answers, but they only led to more questions. How could she face him now, knowing everything built between them rested on such a fundamental lie? Emma's 6th birthday party transformed their backyard into a unicorn wonderland. Sarah had spent weeks planning every detail, from the iridescent decorations to the rainbow-maned unicorn cake that made Emma squeal with delight. As children ran through sprinklers and parents chatted under pastel balloons, Sarah couldn't help but feel proud of how seamlessly she'd become part of this family. James's mother, Eleanor, arrived fashionably late, her silver hair perfectly coiffed and a mountain of gifts in tow. Sarah noticed something off about her future mother-in-law's behavior almost immediately. Every time someone mentioned Emma's other grandmother, James's supposedly deceased sister's mother-in-law, Eleanor's perfectly manicured hands would twitch, and she'd quickly change the subject. "Daddy," Emma's voice cut through the party chaos. "Can we show Sarah my special baby book? The one with the hospital pictures?" James froze mid-conversation with another parent, his face paling slightly. "Princess, maybe later. Your friends are waiting for the piñata." But Emma, bright-eyed and determined, was already running inside. "I'll get it. And the one from Mommy's house too. They're different, and it's silly." Eleanor's punch glass slipped from her hands, shattering on the patio. Red liquid splattered across Sarah's cream sundress, creating an instant commotion. As parents rushed to help clean up and keep kids away from the glass, Sarah caught the loaded glance between James and his mother. Later, while James led the kids in a unicorn-themed scavenger hunt, Sarah headed to the kitchen for more napkins. A crumpled paper in the trash caught her eye. Something about it seemed deliberately hidden rather than carelessly discarded. She shouldn't look, she knew that, but her hands moved of their own accord. It was Emma's birth certificate, worn and creased. Sarah's eyes fixed on the mother's name, Claire Elizabeth Henderson. Not Jessica Cooper, James's sister, not anyone Sarah had ever heard of. Her hands trembled as she smoothed out the document. The adoption date was clearly marked, along with both parents' names, James Cooper and Claire Henderson. The room spun slightly as implications crashed through her mind like waves. James wasn't Emma's uncle. He was her adoptive father. "Sarah?" Eleanor's voice made her jump. "The kids are asking for..." She stopped, seeing the paper in Sarah's hands. For a moment, the two women stared at each other, the truth hanging heavy between them. "I can explain," Eleanor began, her voice barely a whisper. "James just wanted..." "Nana!" Emma burst into the kitchen, covered in frosting and pure joy. "Come see what Daddy got me. It's a real unicorn horn." She grabbed Eleanor's hand, pulling her away, leaving Sarah alone with the birth certificate and the growing realization that her perfect family was built on lies. Outside, she could hear James leading the kids in a birthday song, his voice carrying across the yard. Sarah carefully refolded the birth certificate and slipped it into her pocket. The party would continue, the children would laugh, and she would smile, but nothing would ever be the same. The candlelight flickered across James Cooper's nervous face as he reached for Sarah Mitchell's hand across their intimate dinner table. The moment felt surreal, their favorite pasta dish from the local Italian restaurant perfectly plated on their everyday dishes, soft jazz playing in the background, and the subtle scent of vanilla candles filling their apartment. Sarah had noticed James acting strange all week, but tonight's elaborate at-home dinner setup confirmed her suspicions about what was coming. "Sarah, these past 2 years have been..." James started, his usually confident voice trembling slightly. Before he could finish, tiny footsteps thundered down the hallway, followed by a high-pitched squeal that could only belong to one person. 6-year-old Emma, James's niece, who was supposed to be taking her evening nap. "Uncle Jamie, I can't sleep," Emma announced, her curly brown hair wild from tossing and turning. She froze when she saw the scene before her, her bright eyes widening at the candles and her uncle's position, now halfway between sitting and standing, his hand still clutching something in his pocket. Instead of showing frustration at the interruption, James's face softened with an emotion Sarah couldn't quite read. "Come here, princess," he said, opening his free arm. Emma bounded over, her pink unicorn pajamas a blur of motion. As she reached them, James smoothly dropped to one knee, pulling both the ring box and Emma into position. "Sarah Mitchell," he began again, this time with Emma giggling beside him. "Will you make us the happiest family in the world? Will you marry me?" The tears came before Sarah could stop them. The ring was beautiful, a vintage sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds. But it was the picture before her that truly took her breath away. James and Emma, their faces glowing with hope and love, waiting for her answer. This was everything she'd ever wanted. Yes, she managed through happy tears. Yes, of course. Emma launched herself into Sarah's arms, while James slipped the ring onto her finger. The three of them held each other, laughing and crying, until Emma's excitement finally began to wane. James picked up his drowsy niece, promising to tuck her in properly this time. Sarah began clearing the dishes, her new ring catching the candlelight with every movement, when she heard James's voice from Emma's room. The tone made her pause, sharp, urgent, nothing like the warm voice from moments ago. She doesn't need to know. Leave us alone. James hissed into what must have been his phone. A pause. I mean it. Don't ruin this. When he returned to the kitchen, his face showed no trace of the tense conversation. Just a pushy client, he explained, pulling Sarah close. Now where were we? Sarah melted into his embrace, but something had shifted. The seed of doubt was tiny, barely noticeable, but it had been planted. Like the ring on her finger, it would remain, catching the light at unexpected moments, demanding to be seen.